Good day, ajmahari here. Have you ever been told by somebody, even maybe a mental health professional, that kind of is coming more from the side of working with people with borderline personality? Have you ever been told that you should just validate them more and love them more? And there's all these things that you can do or that you need to do that's somehow going to make a big difference for untreated people with borderline personality, because it's not true. Now, there are some things that you can see on the internet. There's advice for loved ones. It's usually mostly advice for people who are family members, like a parent of an adult child, in the lesser percent where the parents aren't cluster B themselves, or maybe you have a relative, a sister, you know, someone in the family with BPD. And the way to go at supporting those people at times is, sorry, eye-watering, definitely to be supportive, to try to validate, not invalidate, etc. in those types of relationships. But two things about that. One, that's more for family members and generally speaking. And secondly, if the person with BPD isn't in treatment, it's not really going to help at all. So it's not really, I would say anyways, it's not really highly recommended for someone in a relationship with someone with untreated BPD, a significant other relationship. Because the more you give, the more you just try to hear them, the more you validate them, the more you just aren't reacting, or, you know, reacting to what they're putting out there because they're feeling this, that, and the other thing, that they have misperceived and or that they've been triggered, this emotionally dysregulated presentation, also known as very much treating you badly, blaming you for everything, projecting onto you. So within that, then, the person with BPD, you know, some people out there think as a partner that you should just, you know, just don't react, just validate everything and be more loving and more supportive. And somehow that's going to create a change in what? That's going to create a change in the person with BPD because you're giving all this to them. This is really what happens to a lot of people with codependency as well. Because you end up, if you try this, and I've had clients recently and over the years that, you know, have tried this, and with a significant other. Specifically, I'm saying, I think it's an absolute no-go. Because it's only being more codependent. And people have, some people have said it worked for a time, you know, to get a person with BPD back if there's an on-off or ghosting or discard, and then a hoover, or the person wants the person with BPD back. But all of this is really highly emotional, right? Driven by the cognitive dissonance of what people know in their head, or often know parts of about BPD in their head, depending where they are and looking into this. So highly recommended that you not be that person who is trying to even give more, right? By taking everything they say and throw at you and blame you for, and listening to the rages, and just being reassuring and trying to be calm and loving them through it. Because, you know, it doesn't change anything for them. And it's just emboldening anyone doing this. It's emboldening your codependency. It's actually you being more and more codependent. And what do people with BPD and narcissists too, what do they do with that kind of extra, you know, effort at rescue and making them feel okay and helping them to feel better, or trying to, and enabling it is, and yeah, just trying to get it all to be okay so you can be okay, or you can get them back in the relationship. you know, it doesn't work. And even if somebody does get an untreated borderline or a narcissist back into the relationship, then the sad reality is the cycles, you know, speed up. And when they speed up, they just spin faster, and the same things are going to happen all over again. And then the person with codependency could be thrust into the same role of trying to be that extra loving, extra giving. Because, you know, when a person is raging at you, you really shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? Like, set up a boundary ahead of time. Like, if you're going to yell and scream and rage, or if you're going to do A, B, C, then I'm going to go out, or I'm going to go and have a locked room you can go to. I'm going to go to this room or wherever, and I'm going to stay there until you calm down. Or if you don't want to say you calm down, I'm just going to stay there for a while, and then maybe when things calm down, you know. But working to get these people back who have betrayed you, ghosted you, discarded you, or even if you had to leave, but they betrayed you. Because when you find out that they're not who you thought they were, that is a betrayal. And then the other aspect of this is, you know, people thinking, well, they had to be at least partially that person. No, not really. And so it's really, really difficult and super painful. These lost relationships, these ruptured relationships that people in the beginning don't understand until they start looking into it. And then people are looking for all these ways to get them back. Not everyone, but lots of people. And, oh, do this really loving, extra, like what I mentioned, thing. No, really, that's not going to help anybody. Doesn't help the person probably with codependency doing that. Doesn't help the person with BPD. Won't help a person with NPD to change anything about themselves. They'll just feel like they hit the jackpot of, I can get away with anything and everything here, whether they consciously know that or not. And the other thing is, you got to remember that when you're the partner of a person with untreated BPD, and even to a degree the narcissist, you are being experienced as the object other parent representation. So in the better times, aside from idealization in the beginning, that too, and in the better times, object other, probably good mom or dad never had. And then in the devaluation phases and ghosting and discarding and on and off, in the off place, in the, you know, like the horrible place, where they blame you for everything and it's not your fault, then you are being experienced as object other, bad parent, whether it was bad mom, bad dad, or both. So it's not, you're not seen in idealization. You're not seen in their coming back to base mood. You're not seen in their devaluations, because they're experiencing partners, if they're untreated, especially people with BPD, and to a degree narcissists as well, as a parent object other. Okay, so, and they don't know where they end and where you begin. They really are, you know, if I had a nickel for every time a client said to me, I feel like I have, like with this borderline husband or borderline boyfriend or borderline girlfriend or wife, I feel like, well, women say it more than men say it, but, so women often say about borderline men, I just feel like I have another friggin' child if they have children, or they don't have children. I have another child. I have a child and I want a partner. And men feel the same way often with borderline women. And they just might not say, I have another child, but she's acting like a child. And I want to have a partner, not, you know, like be taking care of this child all the time. So, because people with BPD and even NPD and difference, and they're not exactly the same, but they have emotional arrested development, each at a different stage of early childhood development. And so they are still stuck back there emotionally where the arrested emotional development took place. And they might get, you know, they get chronologically older and they might get really, really more intelligent, but not emotionally intelligent, not able to communicate, not able to give you reciprocation in a relationship, which people with codependency seem to like, because of what you experienced in your childhood, you're looking for that reciprocation and reciprocity and mutuality. You want that, and you keep trying to give more and more and more to make it okay so that you can get that mutuality and reciprocity. It's not going to come from an untreated borderline or from a narcissist. And so the thing about that is this idea that you can, I'm just looking at what somebody said here too. The idea that you can be like, quote, their therapist, unquote, or their mommy or their daddy or whatever, but that you can be, quote, good enough for them. It's not that you're not good enough, right? Not that lots of people with codependency feel low, have low self-esteem, low self-worth, or might not even be in touch with self-worth or self-esteem. But that doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you're horrible or all the things that borderlines and narcissists say to people, right? So this idea that you can just love them a little bit harder, give them a little bit more, listen a little bit more, and with people with BPD in particular, validate a little bit more, and something's going to shift is just not true at all. And people just end up, being more used, taken advantage of, and treated horribly. So just know that, and this is not something that is, I'm not, again, there's no blame to the codependent, because people with codependency have their own needs and are trying to meet their needs in the best way that they know how, and how they were inculcated, trained, and or taught, modeled how to meet their needs from childhood, because in childhood, a lot of needs for people with codependency didn't get met, and or there was adverse experience. So this idea that you can just love them better, love them more, validate them more, this can help. I'm not sure partners, like if relationships can really make it, but because very rarely they do. If a person goes to treatment and etc. But then the person with codependency and their own issues from childhood, which are different from what happens to people with BPD or NPD, usually, then you need your own treatment too. But the thing is, people with codependency aren't to blame for what's happening with the cluster B. But what you do need to know, if you don't know already, is that you really can't be good enough, though you're fine. You just need to maybe do some healing, right? You're a human being and you're good enough. You know what I mean? But you can never be good enough for the borderline, because they want what they didn't get from a parent. So then here's an overlap between codependency and BPD, but it doesn't make them the same. I'm not saying people with codependency without BPD have BPD because of this. No. But people with codependency are also trying in an unconscious way, right, to meet their own needs in a relationship. And if you're with a borderline or a narcissist, then, and this inculcation from childhood of, well, fix, rescue, enable, calm them down, make everything okay, walk on eggshells, try hard for them not to feel triggered or bad or get angry or be sad, or any emotions that really blow up and then you're really getting hurt by. And sometimes they're aimed right at you by the borderline or the narcissist. So the bottom line is that people have so much difficulty trying to do this, that, the other thing for the borderline or the narcissist, and it doesn't work because they need therapy. Many with narcissistic personality disorder will never go, for sure. Lots do, but many don't. Again, there's a spectrum factor there. If somebody has 5 traits and they've been diagnosed with NPD, they're not going to be exactly the same as somebody with 7 or 8 traits or a malignant narcissist. And by the way, and the same is true for people with BPD. There are some who are maybe just 5 traits is going to be way different than somebody with 9 traits, depending which 5 traits. They're all different. It's a spectrum. So not everybody is severely to the 9th degree borderline or narcissist. But when they're in that realm, then, they don't know the difference between self and other, and they don't understand, and it's no excuse how they treat you, but they're going to feel entitled, be demanding, act like a child, and need, and you can't satiate them. And they don't know how to soothe or satiate themselves, so they really expect you to do it, maybe unconsciously. But so this idea that you can just give them more, love them more, be more patient, trying to get them back this way, or if you're still in the relationship, or starting the cycle over, and you're just trying to calm them down, just trying to get them to fill in the blank. Stop this, stop that, stop the other thing, do this, do that, whatever the case. This is where people with codependency have their own, from childhood, learned helplessness and wanting to, as you were modeled, or trying in childhood to get a parent's attention, get your needs met, maybe get something positive, be seen and be heard, then this is what codependents are extending out way too much to somebody with BPD or NPD that needs treatment to be able to even learn how to relate to other people. So they're going to be using you up. You're going to get exhausted. This is maximum stressful for people, and not only psychologically, emotionally, but it takes a toll on people's physical health as well. And so the other important thing here is that overlap between codependency and BPD, which doesn't mean that just codependency is you have BPD. No, people with BPD have codependency, but separations here. That you as a codependent are trying to meet your needs by placating and trying to control, but enable, fix, rescue, and get this borderline or the narcissist into a good, positive, kind of like okay frame of mind, so maybe you can get that reciprocation, or you can get some needs met. That is people with codependency reenacting in an unconscious way what happened that created the codependency in your life, because you weren't seen or heard, and you had unmet needs or adverse experience or worse in your own childhood. So, but hear me correctly, please. That overlap is not the same, but it's two similar things happening at times for untreated people with BPD and for codependents in what the unconscious aim is really all about. Trying to get reparation for childhood woundedness and adverse experience in a relationship, but not consciously. And the other thing about a bit of the overlap with codependency and BPD, whatever that might mean, and I will have a video coming to explain that more, that's the reason why the APA didn't put codependency or codependent personality disorder, as it was proposed to DSM-3 in the mid-1980s, because they said that codependency overlapped too much with BPD and dependent personality disorder. But that doesn't mean that what I'm saying here means that you have BPD at all, or that you have dependent personality disorder at all, because the understanding of codependency that I'm trying to forward here, that other people are forwarding really well in their ways too, and then many are not, and misrepresenting and using old definitions and going back to sort of the codependent 12 steps, which, believe me, I don't advocate for that. I've had so many clients tell me, I tried that, didn't work. It's not the way to go now. You need to get into a healing and recovery journey with an expert in this area. I'm not here to work with you if I resonate with you because I'm an expert in this area. So the thing that's really key is not to believe, like, if you've seen this, or some people just do it, but if you see this online about how can you help the borderline in your life, well, you can't really, period. And if they're not in treatment, then any extra validating, loving, giving, no matter what they're doing to you, is just you further abandoning yourself. And it goes back to something in your family of origin and that wounded inner child I'm always talking about. So please try to realize that codependency does not mean that you're to blame for how you're being treated. Because codependency is rooted in childhood, adverse experience, not being seen, not being heard, having a lot of crucial needs that go unmet, and then some. And so that happens to you as a child. And then when you're repeating that as an adult, often with a cluster B partner, what they do is not your fault. You are not to blame. And you are not doing anything that is, you know, hurting them the way that they hurt others. So the other thing is, where it can be advantageous to be able to validate or support and love and be sort of more, I guess, calm with a person with BPD in particular, is when they have had substantial treatment. And then what substantial treatment means is, you know, hard to describe, but they will be behaving in ways where they don't need, they don't have a sense of entitlement, they don't demand, they don't need, they don't, you know, give you the silent treatment or explode every time you're 5 minutes late, or you didn't answer their text right away, or all these things that they pick at, right, that they say you've done so wrongly that you haven't, because there's no room in a relationship with a borderline, untreated, or a narcissist. There's no room for the codependent. There isn't, not in their eyes. It's all about them. So you're getting lost because your needs aren't going to get beyond the idealization. And if you have a honeymoon phase, that's it. You know, and they're mirroring you there. So they're still not seeing you or hearing you for you. And so people with codependency have low self-esteem, low self-worth. If some clients have said to me, I don't think I have any self-worth anymore. Or after the relationships, people feel so, when it you know, ruptures, when you leave, or you're ghosted, or you're discarded, or you're ghosted, you don't know. All these different circumstances, it's really important to know that that advice out there for people on how to help the borderline in your life, that's really more for family members, and could be applied by significant others. But the person with BPD has to be really making progress in effective BPD-oriented therapy and treatment. Otherwise, you're just going to be abandoning yourself more, and you're just going to be getting used and hurt even more. So there's a comment on a video that somebody was told this, that they what video of mine is it? Oh yeah, okay. Person said, I was told to stay with him, read all the literature, love him unconditionally, and quote, he needs someone consistent, unquote, by a BP counselor. And yeah, then they went through a lot, almost lost themselves. It was crazy making, horrible pressure. And they finally sought out a pastor at their church who said to them that they're just being, the person with BP is just using their desire to help. And I think what I want people to hear most in this message is, you, whether you think you have codependency or not, or whether you have counterdependency, you, the partner or the ex of the person with BPD, a person with BPD or NPD, you need to know right now that whatever they said to you at the end, or whether they ghosted, discarded, or whatever they said to you throughout the relationship, is not true about you. It's their projection. It's their stuff to deal with that they dumped on you. And then you have your stuff to deal with that, like, nobody was hearing, and maybe you couldn't articulate and put into words. But the ghosting and the discarding triggers people with codependency, and you may not have known that you had codependency before, and you might have it moderately or what have you. It triggers you back to woundedness from childhood that might not be in your consciousness. So to give extra, to give more, to think that you can follow instructions I've read out there on the internet, like how to help the borderline, how to love the borderline. you're just abandoning yourself. And it's really tragically sad, because it's not like people, I'll just stick with BPD. Not like people at BPD don't have some good qualities. And when you meet them in the beginning, and how are they, and how do they do this, and how do they do that, and what's real and what's not real, well, you know, it's hard to say. But the key thing is to know that these relationships are impossible. They are not healthy. And people with codependency are self-abandoning. You are abandoning yourself, like you learned in childhood how to do, to help a parent, parentification, etc., that you might have experienced in childhood. Need to stop now. And or if you've been ghosted or discarded and you're in that painful place, that really unbelievably painful place of the BPD relationship breakup, you have to, you'll benefit from focusing on you and getting into your own healing recovery process. Nobody can save or rescue a borderline or a narcissist. Nobody can. They have to want to go to treatment. Some people with NPD really do, you know, because they're not all the same, not the same area, the same of that spectrum. But people with BPD or NPD, they want to go to treatment. They need to do it, and they need to really work it through for themselves. And it doesn't usually save a relationship. So make sure that if you haven't been, whether you are still in the relationship and it's rocky and you need out, or you're not sure what you're going to do, or you've been ghosted or discarded, or you left them, now's the time in all of that agony to get into a process of healing recovery and to learn more about why it hurts so much. Because all of the pain that people are in after the borderline or the narcissist, lots of it has to do with them, and that's all the borderline or the narcissist's responsibility, not the fault or anything to do with the codependent. But now you need to find out more about what the borderline and the narcissist did that's inexcusable and hurt you. What did that trigger back to something in your family of origin that you need to know more about so that you can heal and recover? And the other thing I just want to say really quickly is you can't think your way out of this. You know, you really can't. So I hope that was helpful, or a reminder or food for thought for some people. But again, people with codependency are not ever to blame for how a borderline or a narcissist treated you, what they did, what they said. And just know that as much as you wanted to be seen and heard, and you felt like that in the idealization phase, it wasn't really what that was. And they were mirroring you to you. And no, you don't fall in love with yourself, but these people just aren't who they present themselves as in the beginning. Narcissists, some of them may target, they may know that. I don't believe all of them do. It depends on that spectrum again, where they are in the NPD spectrum. But people with BPD are not really targeting, and they're not really love bombing more often than not. Unless they have some narcissistic traits, it's hard to say. But the bottom line in this is, it's now time to focus on you. And, you know, check out my video on the stages of a BPD relationship. I think it's called, or phases, I don't know. It's got like a fuchsia kind of thing in the thumbnail. And then one that I did recently, you know, the 7 stages, the borderline BPD relationship cycle, similar to the NPD, although some differences, relationship cycle, and the 7 stages. And you'll just see how people with codependency are not responsible for what happens. You get really hurt because there are these cycles. The narcissistic cycle in relationships, narcissistic personality disorder cycle to be specific, and the BPD relationship cycle. And they are already something that can be identified in these people. And then you're going to encounter that not knowing what it is probably in the beginning or for a while afterwards. So make sure that you're not listening to anyone that says how to love the borderline, or how to help your borderline more, or how to whatever with the borderline or the narcissist, because you can't do it. It's self-abandonment, and it doesn't work. You're not their mommy, you're not their daddy, you're not their therapist. and you are negating yourself in the relationship, or were, by all that you give, overgive. To what end? What do you get back? When is it ever about you? Because most people report to me, and I've been working with clients for 32 and a half years, that when they have a feeling or they feel hurt by something, whether the BPD or NPD did or not, well, there's no room to hear that. And usually you just get raged at and treated horribly for suggesting that they could have hurt you in any way, or whatever it is that you are feeling. That you, as soon as you have a feeling, or you have a parent that passes away, or you have a family member that's sick, and whether it's minor or major, the person with BPD, a lot of narcissists, well, them as well, they're just going to disappear. They're not going to be there for you. They don't have any feels for you. You know, you've got all the feels, and they're lacking the feels because they don't know what they feel, and they half the time, 3/4 of the time, can't stand what they feel. And they're lost to the arrested emotional development in the case of BPD by or before the age of 2. In the case of NPD, around the age of 3, according to James F. Masterson. Some people say 3 to 5. So, and make no mistake about it, as another YouTuber out there tries to do, there's no glorifying the narcissist. And there's no making excuses for them or the borderline, because even though some people with BPD can be very sweet at times, they're not all the same. The bottom line is they're so broken that only treatment and therapy can help them to heal. You can't do it. And these relationships are impossible. So it's time to take care of you. Time to focus on you if you're the partner and, you know, wondering what to do, or still wanting that borderline or narcissist back, or you are, you know, you've just been ghosted and you wonder, like, is this it? Or are they coming back? Or you were discarded. Very, very extremely painful. But people need to heed that pain as a big red flag and a big stop sign. And it hurts to change direction. And don't fall prey to the, I think, what is it called? I can't think of it now. The sunk cost fallacy, which is the more time you've given this, the more you've tried to make this relationship work, whether it's, you know, a year, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 15 years, the more that you've been involved in this relationship and the harder that you've tried, but like still nothing's changed and it's really painful. The sunk cost fallacy is that, well, but I put in all this time and all this effort and even, yeah, money, and invested so much in this person, and I thought this person was going to be or was my soulmate, and I thought this person, we were going to grow old together. The sunk cost fallacy keeps people stuck too, because just because you've tried so hard and you've given so much, but there's no reciprocation, that's really key. So it's like it's healthy to give up and start to work with someone on the process of working through the grief process and all that loss of all that you did invest. But don't think that the more time or the more money, the more emotions, the more effort, the more everything that you invested into a borderline or narcissist means that you should invest 1 more second, 1 more day, 1 more penny, 1 more ounce of too much empathy or feeling sorry for them. What about you?